Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Paula McCain. I'm one of the senior business advisors here at the North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. A couple of things. First, how about them Rangers? Can I get a
Bravo!
woo-hoo? Okay. And my next thing I want to make sure everybody understands, today is National Men Make Dinner Day. So I'm just saying.
Send a text to my husband real quick.
There you go. There you go. The SBDC is the leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, and because of that, we can offer all of our services, such as webinars and any advising, to you at no cost. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. Welcome to Unity, Leading Toward Unity, presented by Ashley Smalley. A little bit about Ashley. She is a human resources consultant. Well, her company is a human resources consulting firm. She is a certified human resources professional, a trusted consultant and facilitator in the workplace culture sphere. She uses this perspective to equip organizations of every kind with the essential skills they need to foster unity within their teams. Ashley, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Paula. Well, y'all, I'm gonna all but beg you to turn on your cameras if you're feeling bold this morning, and let me see your face. Oh, there's Brett. All right. Well, here we are. We are going to talk about unity and how it begins with you. Paula, does everything look correct on your side?
It does.
Wonderful. Okay, y'all. So we're going to talk about unity and how to use the influence that we have to bring unity on our teams. I come from a bizarre background that gave me a little bit of visibility in terms of the importance of unity. I started out in just a dream job right out of college in the lingerie department of a department store, selling bras and panties to older ladies, and then I moved from that retail space into local government, and I served there for about 5 years at the city of Bridgeport, and then I transitioned into my first HR role, and I did HR in the oil and gas industry for about 11 years before I transitioned into this consulting role. I've also served on a church staff for about 6 years. And then I work at this place called home where the people expect to be fed and chauffeured and stuff just on a real regular basis. And here's what I've learned. No matter what team you're on, no matter what the industry is, what the goals are, all of that aside, in order for us to really be effective at what we do and in order for us to really enjoy it, we've got to have unity on our team. It can be so stressful to be on a team that's full of division and full of tension all of the time. But if we get unified, we can get really good at what we're doing, and then we can actually start to enjoy it and not hate it so much whenever the alarm goes off in the morning. So I want y'all to help me a little bit. My style is pretty interactive, so it's going to be very boring if you don't talk. So Brett, this is your invitation to just be you. But can you
Poor
guys
thing, you don't know what you've done.
Oh, well, I will also shut it down if you get out of line. So be ready. The question is this: what are some of the things that keep unity from happening on a team?
Is this where you want our feedback?
100%. Yes.
Jump
yes.
right into that.
Paula was talking, but I think she was muted. So
I muted myself again and started talking. Dissension, lack of trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brett, what do you think?
I think trust is always at the top of the list when it comes to being unified in anything. And also similarities. I've found that people tend to go to cliques that they are comfortable with rather than assimilating with people that are not necessarily in their little sphere of normality, if you want to call it that.
we gravitate toward the people we're comfortable with, and we kind of tend to stay there, and then division can develop pretty easily that way. Absolutely. What about, I hear a lot of times teams will say communication is a big issue for Unity. We kind of break down there when we perceive that there's good communication, or we perceive that something has been communicated, but it really hasn't. What I have found is the biggest thing that gets in the way of Unity tends to be people. You know, they bring their personalities and their baggage and their desires and their demands and all of that. And then we try to put a whole bunch of different people in one organization and try to make this thing go. And it's the people that create the issue toward Unity. So if you were to say, okay, I'm looking at my team and we've got a Unity problem. What am I going to do about it? You are going to get on Google like you do for anything, and you're going to Google, how do I fix this Unity problem? And what you're going to find is there are a lot of things, lots of articles that point toward management and ownership, things that they can do in terms of improving communication, having equality in the workplace, having an open door policy, just a sense of fairness and equality across the board. And those things are totally true. We just said those are critical things for Unity. But what sometimes happens is people kind of feel like if I'm not in that role, I don't have any say over the Unity in my organization. Or I'm in that role, but my job is to just do these high level things. I'm the owner of the company, so I'm going to do these high level things. I'm going to work on communication, and I'm going to work on open doors and equality in the workplace and equal pay and all of that. But I forget that my personal interactions with people really have an impact on Unity in the workplace as well. And so really what I want us to pay good close attention to today is, for a second, just take off your ownership hat, take off your leadership hat, and really just think about, as a human, I have way more influence on my team than what I feel like I do. Every single one of us have incredible influence regardless of our role in the organization. We impact people all the time, the people we live with, the people we work with. Brett, I want you to think about that one person on your team that if they kind of look at you like that one more time, if they kind of give you attitude, if they don't do exactly what you say one more time, you're going to be willing to key their car or fight in the parking lot. You know, the one that just gets on your last nerve just the drop of a hat, you're done with them. We have influence even over those people on our teams. And the question comes down to, what will we do with our influence? The great philosopher Clint Eastwood, he said it this way. He said, it takes tremendous discipline to control the influence and the power that we have over other people's lives. What will we do with our influence? We've got to choose. We've got to choose, will I use my influence day in and day out for Unity or for division? The thing is, we're never neutral. We're always making a decision one way or another about Unity or division on our team. And probably you don't stand in front of the mirror every day and go, today I'm just going to be about division. Like I'm going to just go into work and see what I can do to kind of wreck every good thing we have. Nobody does that. But by interaction, the way we react, the actions that we take, we are making a decision every single day about how we'll use our influence and whether that will be for Unity or for division. Now, here's why Unity matters so much. There are some studies done that show that productivity goes up by 20 to 25% when people feel connected to their team. I don't know about you. I could stand to be 20 to 25% more productive. Yeah, I'm running a small business too, and I'm going, there's so much that needs to be done every day. Yes, more productivity would be really, really good. But then on top of that, you've got the morale issues, the culture issues that happen, where when people are really displeased, you have lots of turnover, you have more HR headaches and just different things that you're having to deal with, that if we could get everybody unified, man, it would really change the way it feels to come into work. And so we've got to be thinking about, how am I going to use that influence? The Association of Talent Development says that there are two ways to unify a team. The first is when people care about their team's goal, and the second is when people care about their teammates. So our goals are all very different on this call. We represent lots of different companies, lots of different industries. So we're not going to talk about that a lot, although I will say you need to have goals and you need to communicate those regularly and thoroughly to a level of understanding, not just sharing information, but so that your people understand what your goals actually are. But really, for today, we're going to focus on caring about our teammates and how that kind of genuine care will really help us use our influence to bring unity on our team. So get ready. We're going to do the ABCs of unity. It's going to be A through F. I'm not taking you through Z. Nobody's got time for that. We're going to go A through F, and I'm going to need your participation. So just get ready. The first thing is, with our influence, we can act patiently and humbly in an effort to draw people in. Who on the call would say, I'm really good at patience? It's my very best thing. You can either raise your hand if you've got your camera on, or you can use the little hand raise feature. Who would say, I'm really good at patience? There's some like, I don't know, maybe like I'm very, you know what, in a room full of any number of people over 50, there'll usually be one or two people who raise their hand and say, I'm really good at patience. And other people in the room will affirm that. The rest of us, though, the rest of us are like, I need to be more patient yesterday. Like I'm not doing very well in the patience department. And this is where I fall also. I want to be more patient. I work on being more patient, but naturally not that patient. And here's what happens to me. You can decide if it happens to you. When I'm working with someone and they're inconveniencing me because they won't do what I said to do when I said to do it, how I said to do it on the, there's I've spelled it out, and you won't do the things I'm asking you to do, or the things I need you to do, or the things that are my priorities. My impatience switches really quickly into a critical spirit about that person. My impatience goes to criticism in a heartbeat. And I'm not proud of that. That is something I'm aware of that happens to me. So here I am in an HR role. I'm the HR director. We have a group of employees that are new managers, and I need documentation. One of the supervisors wants to take some sort of disciplinary action. I can't remember if it was a suspension or a termination, but he's ready to take action. I'm like, great. In HR, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. I need some documentation. And so he won't get me the doc. And what I'm asking for is a single paragraph. I'm not asking for a novel, but he will not get it to me. And I'm like, okay, let me explain to you why I need this. And I'd go through that. And he's like, yeah. But he never turns it in. He never gives it back to me. I'm like a little more firm. Okay, here's the deal. This is why I need what I need. And if I don't have it by X date, we're not going to be able to move forward with the action that you are trying to take. Like, help me help you. Well, that doesn't work. So then what else do? I send an email and I copy his boss, like, hey, we got to get these things taken care of. And he just is not turning it in. And at this point, I've kind of run the gamut of how patient I felt like I was capable of being at that time. And so I'm not proud of what happened next, but I walk into the HR generalist office and I said, I don't understand what his problem is. I don't. What I'm asking is not rocket science. Like, all I'm asking him to do is help me help him. Get me the stinking paperwork. It's not that big of a deal. Could we please just go ahead and get that turned in? And then it happened. In my impatience, the next thing that came out of my mouth was, I guess he's too stupid or too lazy to do it. Now, I confess to you, that's not a great way to win friends and influence people, right? That's not the sort of attitude that's going to bring people in. And that's true. But it happens to us sometimes. In our impatience, we become critical of others, not just in the issue that's at hand, but in their personhood, in everything they do and everything they touch. And we start to become really, really critical. Here's why. Our impatience is pretty much arrogance in disguise. It's where I've said, okay, everything that matters to me, all of my priorities, the things that I've got to get done today, the things that are at the top of my list, they're more important than the things that are at the top of your list and your priorities and all of that. So I've taken myself and I've elevated me and everything about me in my own mind, so that I'm over and higher than everybody else. That's arrogance, right? Here's my question to you. This is a for real, for discussion question. How do arrogant people make you feel?
I really don't have time for them myself,
Uh-huh.
because they're just irritating because they are better. They are better than me, you know,
Or
and
they seem to think so.
yeah, yeah.
It's
In their mind, they're better than me, and I guess it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel less.
So normally if I ask this question in a room full of people, I get two answers. One is I feel small. They make me feel incompetent or inept. And the other answer is they make me angry. I want to fight. Like why do you think you can talk to me that way kind of deal? So it's usually one or the other. If that's how arrogant people make us feel, do you know what nobody ever says? Nobody ever answers the question, man, arrogant people really make me want to spend more time with them. Arrogant people really make me want to work on more projects together with them. They make me want to do things after hours with them. That is not what people say about arrogant people. If that's how arrogant people make us feel, then we're trying to use our influence to bring unity on our team, then we have got to know that our impatience, which is arrogance in disguise, is pushing people away. And that's why humility, that's why I say act patiently and humbly. Humility is the freedom from pride or arrogance. It's where I go, okay, hold up. Here's where I've kind of got myself pictured in my head. Let me bring it down a notch. Let me go ahead and try to see us on an even playing field. Let me try to look at the other perspective for a minute. And let me just take a breath. Because the truth is, if we're going to have any chance of being patient with people that are on our last nerve or not doing things how we've wanted it done or is inconveniencing us, humility is the only shot we've got at getting toward that kind of patience. So we've got to make sure we are acting patiently and humbly. And when we do, we are making a choice. Whether that patience is deserved or not, we are making a choice to use our influence to unify. The second thing that we can do is to be positive and optimistic. Do you know, can you think of anything that sucks the energy out of a room faster than the chronic complainer? Do you know the chronic complainer, the one you see them coming and you're like, I'm about to lose 15 minutes of my life. I'm never going to get back. They're not going to have anything good to say about anybody or anything. Like somebody pull the fire alarm because I'd rather be wet than stuck in this conversation. Do you guys know the chronic complainer? If you don't know the chronic complainer, what do you think I'm going to say? Probably you are the chronic complainer, right? And the truth is, we all are pretty chronic complainers. There was actually a study done that showed that in a typical conversation, a person will complain on average of once per minute. Per minute. That's a lot. My husband says I use so many words to say something. That means I'm not going to be done with my first complaint before I just launch into the next one. That's a lot. Do you know why every one of you that I can see your jaw dropped when I said once per minute? Do you know why? Because nobody puts on their resume that one of my strengths is complaining. Nobody's like, you know what, my best thing, the thing I have to offer to this organization is I'm a great complainer. Nobody says that. Right? We don't even own up to the fact that we're complaining. What do we call it instead? We call it venting, right? I just need to get this off my chest for a second. Or I'm not complaining. These are the facts. I'm just telling it like it is, right? All right, here's the test. You'll know you're in complaining territory when it's negative. When it's negative, when I'm not looking forward to a solution, I'm just kind of ruminating on the fact that this is not how it should be and it's negative. Complaining will always be negative. There are a couple of other things that happen with complaining. And the first is that it's contagious as all get out. It spreads like wildfire. It'll go from office to office to office or department to department to department. And the next thing you know, you look up and no one has anything good to say about anybody or anything that's happening in the organization. The second thing that happens is if I complain about the same thing long enough, I put you in a position to decide, are you with me or are you against me? And division develops. And I'll just be honest, if you're against me on this one, there's a high probability I'm not even giving you a shot to be with me on the next one. And division further develops. I worked with an accounting team one time that they had worked together, most of them for nearly 20 years. And they were very, very divided. There were two distinct camps. They were some of the most negative people I have ever encountered in all of time. And they lived in these two very distinct camps. And here's what happened. It had become so divided that group A would come in the morning at 6 a.m. And when they came in, they would set the thermostat to 60 degrees because they knew that Group B hated to be cold. And then Group B would come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, just absolutely livid, and wait for Group A to leave for lunch to go work out. And then they would bump the air up to 80 so that they would suffocate to death when they got back from working out. It was the most petty thing I've ever had to deal with as an HR. We had to put a lockbox on a thermostat for a bunch of grown people who could not get along. And the root of it, if you were to trace it back, was complaining and negativity that created very distinct division in the organization. So if we're going to use our influence to bring unity to our team, we've got to do a couple of things at least. And one is a little bit of self-reflection, and let's make sure we're not the chronic complainer, that we're not the one that constantly keeps the pot stirred, that we're not the source of negativity on our team. We're not the one going, I can't believe they said that. Can you believe they asked us to do that? Can you believe that this is that we're not the one bringing all of the negativity. And in order to do that, if I'm being really honest, we are going to have to control our focus because we steer where we stare. It's true in the car. It's true in life. I had a boss one time who sent me out to what I will refer to as HR boot camp. He knew a really great HR professional in California, and he sent me out there to go and learn of her ways. And so when I went, I learned that where I was going was near where the Golden State Warriors play basketball, and they were my favorite team. And so I said to my husband, what are the odds they're playing the week I'm going out there? You could go, we could make a weekend of it. And that's what we did. And so we were out there, and I don't know if you've ever been on Route 1 in California, but it goes mountains, highway, ocean, just bam, bam, bam. And it's stunning. It's so gorgeous. And what we learned in the car that trip is that you steer where you stare. If you stare at the mountains long enough, you will eventually begin to steer toward the mountains. And we learned the hard way, if you stare at the ocean long enough, you will steer into oncoming traffic headed toward the ocean. We steer where we stare. It's true in the car. It's true in life. It's true at work. And here's what I mean. If I stare at things in my coworkers that drive me crazy, it eventually becomes all I can see in them. I worked with an IT guy one time. I don't think this is true of all IT people, so I'm not saying that. Nobody try to draw generalizations from this. I just worked with one single IT guy who got on my last nerve. He was so condescending and so rude. And every time I would call him with a problem, he would say, what did you do? I did my job and my computer's not working and I need your help, was kind of my attitude. And so I would do everything I could before I had to call him. I would do all of the normal IT things. I would make sure it was plugged in. I would turn it off and turn it back on. And when it didn't work and I was at the end of my knowledge, I would call. And I realized one day I get to choose what I focus on. I can focus on the fact that he is condescending and he is rude and he makes me feel small, and he also simultaneously makes me want to fight him in the parking lot. I could focus on all of those things, or I can focus on the fact that he brings value to the organization. He can do for me something that I cannot do for myself. He made it possible for me to continue to go on with my workday when otherwise I would be completely stuck. We have to control our focus, because if we do not, we will steer ourselves in the wrong direction. We have to make ourselves look at the positive attributes that people bring to the team. And maybe that's in a work capacity, or maybe that is just in a general human capacity. And I'll be honest, there are some people that I struggle with so badly. We rub each other the wrong way. We're wired completely differently. And the only good thing I can find to focus on sometimes is, well, they are human and they were born with a purpose. Like that, sometimes I have to get to the very root and make myself focus there to be able to be positive. But we get to choose what we're going to focus on. So I've got a little activity for it. You're going to hate it. All right, here's what it is. I want you to think about somebody in your mind that drives you crazy at work. Don't say it out loud. You can write it down if you want, but mostly I just want you to do the exercise. Get their face pictured in your mind so it's a real person. And I want you to think about a quality or a characteristic that they possess that drives you crazy. So I'll do it for you, and then I'm going to give you a second to do it. I've got a
To work
face.
here together in the same office, right here. All of us.
Lori, don't make eye contact, okay? Just do it in your head. All right, so you've got the person's face pictured in your mind. And what I might be inclined to say is, I really am so frustrated by his inability to give clear direction. Okay, that's something that makes it very hard to work with him. All right, so you have your person and do you have your characteristic? That part was easy. I mean, that just comes right to you, right? All right, here's the hard part. Same person's face pictured in your mind. What is something you could focus on instead? So for me, it's that he always makes time for me when I have questions. Okay. So I have to really stop and think about it. So if you're thinking about that person, I want you to take a second. What could you focus on instead? I will tell you it's much harder to do that one than the first one. When we're in a room full of people and I ask those two questions, and that first question, I'm like, pair up and tell the thing that gets on your nerves. And the room just erupts like, da, 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 but I can't, and it's so loud. And then I say, okay, same partner, same person, same face, different traits, something positive you could focus on. And it's like, I guess and there's no energy. The energy sucked out of the room. And I say, y'all, you made my point for me. You have stared at the things that get on your nerves so long that it's almost impossible to see anything else. We've got to pay attention to where we're focusing, because here's the deal. This is where it creates division in the organization. We don't tend to keep things to ourselves for very long. We tend to talk to other people about them. So if I'm focused on the things in Lori that drive me absolutely crazy, that's what I'm going to be talking to Paula about. And then I put Paula in a position to decide, does she agree with me? And that creates division between her and Lori, or does she disagree with me? And that creates division between us. Whereas if I'm focusing on the positive things that Lori does, those are the things I'm talking about to Paula. And we're bringing the organization, we're bringing everybody together instead of unintentionally pulling people apart. The other thing that we can do in this realm of positivity and optimism is just think and be intentional to be positive and optimistic. When everybody's standing around saying all the negative things they can think of, we're the one that's infusing positivity into the conversation. When everybody's standing around talking about that one employee that just really gets under your skin, you're the one that says, yeah, but I did hear them saying they've got all these really significant things going on. Maybe that's why they've been a little hard to get along with this week. There are these personal things. Maybe that's why. I'm not trying to create division with the people who are negative and frustrated, because I understand exactly where they're coming from. But that yeah, but says, yeah, those things are true, but maybe there's a different perspective. And sometimes just a subtle shift like that will completely change the dynamic of the conversation. And sometimes bigger than that, the organization. When everybody's complaining about a decision that's been made or the way we're doing it, we are constantly trying to paint a picture for them that there is a different perspective than the one that they can see from where they're standing. And that's intentional with our positivity and optimism. The next thing we can do with our influence is cut out comparison. Now, I just learned about this today on the news. I had never heard that people compare themselves to other people. Have you guys heard of this? Like, I am totally kidding. I've been doing it probably since I was 10 or 12 years old, right? Where we're looking at the people around us, and just on a personal level, we're comparing everything: bodies and faces and skin and teeth and hairstyles and what we wear and where we live and what we drive and where we go on vacation and whether or not we have kids and how those kids act in public compared to other people's kids and whether or not we're married, and just all of these things. We're just in constant comparison. And then we get out of bed and put down our phone and start getting ready for the day. And then we're like, okay, we go to work and now we're comparing skill sets and strengths and weaknesses and job assignments and performance and where we went to college, like just all of these things. And it's exhausting. Here's the other problem with comparison. I think besides the mental exhaustion, the other thing that comparison does is it takes teammates and turns us into competitors, where we are trying to just win. We're trying to see who's the best, who's on top, who's winning. And so it's just this constant comparison and competition with the people around us that keep us from really working well together. I wonder if instead of constantly competing with one another, what if we sought to be a complement to each other instead? What if I said, okay, I'm going to do my job the best possible way I can to make it as easy as possible for Brett to do his job. I'm going to bring the strengths that I possess to the table and not just serve myself with them, but serve other people with them as well. There's a woman on my team right now who she thinks kind of in big picture, and she's a very kinesthetic learner. So she's up and moving all the time. She has an idea, like a shot, she's off. She's just going and doing the next thing. And she's just kind of flying by the seat of her pants all the time, but it really works well for her. And it makes her really easy to work with because she's super flexible. Well, by contrast, I like a little order and a little structure, and I like for there to be like a long-term plan, and I like for there to be a color-coded spreadsheet, and I really want to have some strategy about what I'm doing. And we could drive each other crazy because we're so polar opposite. But we made a decision a long time ago that we were going to be a complement to each other because she possesses strengths that I do not have, and I possess strengths that she does not have. So when I know a staff meeting's coming that she for sure has forgotten about and has not checked her email in 3 weeks and has no idea that an agenda has been sent out, I just know that about her. And so instead of just being like, well, this is going to be very unfortunate for her when she's late to the meeting and doesn't have the agenda, I text her and say, hey, meeting's in 10 minutes. He sent an agenda. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I set her up for success, right? Well, the flip side is also true whenever our boss says, hey, can you just take care of this task? I just need somebody to do it. Ashley, can you do it? And I'm like, when am I going to do this? The next 3 weeks, or every minute of the next 3 weeks is completely planned out and organized. When am I possibly going to do it? And my coworker says, hey, I mean, we're just standing here visiting right this second. It's probably going to take 5 minutes. What if we just did it now? And I'm like, never would have thought of that. It always has to go to the end of the list. And so she's helping make me better. We're being a complement to one another just in how we're wired and what our natural strengths are. So how can we do that? At a department level, how can we function in such a way where we're setting the other departments up for success? If customer service is taking a call that's a complaint, don't just say, hey, sorry, you need to talk to so-and-so. You take all of the information, you call so-and-so and say, hey, this person's upset. Here's what the issues are, so they can be prepared to make the call back. You see, we're just working hard to make things easier on the people around us so that we're working more efficiently together instead of against each other. And that strengthens the entire team. There was a study done where 97% of employees and executives said that they believe a lack of alignment impacts the outcome of a task or project. By show of hands, nod of the head, or a thumbs up, would you say that that's true, that lack of alignment impacts an outcome of a task or project? Yeah, I think so. And my question is, how in the world can we be aligned if we are busy competing with each other all the time? How are we going to function if we're in constant competition with each other? I want you to think about your organization for a second as the human body. You know this, you have one. When the human body functions like it's supposed to, this thing is a well-oiled machine. When every part of your body does its job and it does it well, it complements all the other body parts and the thing just works. Here's what I've learned as I approached 40. Sometimes your body parts just decide they don't want to do what they were assigned to do. Have you ever noticed this? And so no, Brett says no. A couple of years ago, my toe next to my big toe decided it wanted to migrate and be spooning partners with my big toe instead of living next to my middle toe where it belonged. I don't know why, it just needed a vacation. So it moved over. And as I babied that foot, because it hurt on the ball of my foot with every step, as I babied that, boy, I realized that kind of did a little number on my opposite hip, and now I'm kind of limping through all the things and it is working its way up my back. And I would get these tension headaches and it would feel like somebody was sticking steak knives in the bottom of my brain at the end of every day. And it's because my foot wasn't doing its job like it was supposed to. When we think about our organization and we think about all of the different functions as a body part, they've all got to do their job as a complement to the other, or the thing. It may still work, but it's not going to work as efficiently as it could. And if somebody I used to work in a company where The non-revenue producers were really offended by being called non-revenue producers. It made them feel less than. And so sometimes they would just kind of act out and try to get attention, like the revenue producers were. Y'all, that's the same thing as my hand getting jealous of my eye, that it's got a more glamorous job. You know, the eyes get all the attention. Everybody's always talking about how beautiful the eyes are. The eyes are the gateway to the soul. You know, screw it. From now on, I'm going to show up and I'm just going to be the eye. It's like my hand trying to do a job that it's not supposed to do. Not only is it not picking up things and moving things, but what else? It's getting in the way of the eye doing the eye's job. We've got to think about, as individuals and as departments, how can we be a complement to each other? And when we use our influence that way, we will be making a decision about unity on our team. Okay, anybody have any questions or thoughts that you want to add so far?
You said one thing about you never know, like you were talking about that person that had some challenges going on at home.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced that. One of the most arrogant people that I've ever worked for years ago thought this person was the most obnoxious and petty and mercurial people that I've ever met. And then I met their spouse, who was very domineering, and you could see the change in that person's demeanor when the spouse was around. And I went, oh, I get it. I get it now.
It starts to make sense.
Uh-huh.
And in a little bit, we're going to talk about, at a leadership level, the importance of genuine care. But really, part of it's just being aware of what's happening around you and not making assumptions
Yeah.
that you know everything, and really asking questions. We're not talking about conflict resolution, but a lot of times problems could easily be resolved if I just understood where somebody was coming from. But
Yeah.
I got to stop for a second to actually take time to ask the question.
Yeah. I just think stepping back and just saying, okay, well, why is that person acting that way? Is there something behind this behavior, or something going on that we don't know about and not going to know about? So
And
giving them
sometimes it
grace.
is just people behaving badly, but
Yeah.
a lot of times there's stuff going on. I mean, when my attitude's not quite right, there's stuff going on.
Mhm.
And it's so funny when it's us, it feels so justifiable. We totally understand why I was a little snappy or why I was a little irritable. It's when other people are doing it, like they need to get over it. I don't understand what their problem is. It's because we're not standing in their shoes and we don't know what they're going through.
Mhm.
So you're exactly right. Anybody else have other thoughts or questions before we move on? All right,
I
here we
always
go.
think it's wrong. I
Oh.
apologize. I always think it's wrong to assume, like you said, that you know what it, like you said, what someone else is going through and try to understand what their work level is. I know in my position, I try to think about the other people that I work with and what their workload is and what they experience on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
And I don't pretend to know how hard that is or how difficult it is or how time consuming it is. And so I think that makes a big difference if you can step back and go, well, they've got a lot of stuff going on too, and they're pretty
Sure.
busy. So
Well,
I
and
got to
that
pull
ties
myself back a little bit on that. Yeah.
into that whole concept of patience and humility, right? Because
Right.
if I feel like I'm the busiest person in this organization and I don't understand why it's taking you so long and I don't know why you're frustrated that I asked you for that, there's an arrogance in that
Right.
that I feel like mine's more important than everyone else's. So
Right.
totally spot on, Christy.
Right.
All right, let's move on. The next thing we can do to use our influence to unify the people around us is to defer to others. And really, what I'm talking about is putting others first. We live in such a me-focused society, where everything's about me. What do I want? What do I need? What do I think? Everything's about us. And we are naturally wired that way. But with intention, we can put others first. The thing is, if there are, I don't know, 50 of us on a team in an organization and we're all me focused going 50 different directions, well, that's creating division just by the nature of how we're going. But if we will stop and put others first and everybody's others minded, now we're all coming toward each other. We're not going to necessarily always be on the same page, but we're at least thinking of others before ourselves, that's going to pull us together. So y'all give me some ideas of what you think it could look like to put others first at work. I'll give you an example to get your juices flowing, and then I really do want you to jump in and help with this. I had back before everything was digitized in HR, where it was all digital employee files. There was usually a stack of paperwork laying around that needed to be filed in employee files, right? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. So they're just stacks, and a responsible, reasonable HR person would just file it as they went. Some of us waited a day or a week or a month or a quarter until we could find time to get to the filing. And I worked for an organization where very flexible hours. So on Fridays, when your stuff was done, you could leave. Leave at 1, 2, 3 o'clock. Nobody cared. Wasn't going to ask any questions. And so that was the environment that we worked in. So normally it was a Friday afternoon before I could get around to finding time to file this stack of paper I couldn't run and jump over. And I would, like labor it into the file room and get it all sorted. And it would be where my boss could leave. And she would come into the file room periodically and turn on music. And we would sit in there for 2 or 3 hours, if I'm being honest, sometimes, and file. And she could have left. She could have started her weekend early. And instead, she saw me doing a terrible task and came and did what she could to make it lighter and faster on me. Well, let me tell you what that did for me with her. It built loyalty. It built connection. It made me want to serve her well because she was serving me well. And so you see unity start to happen in putting others first. So now y'all tell me, what are some other things we could do to put others first at work? Here comes
Bueller,
Christy.
Bueller.
I think the
I think
challenge.
that you can consciously, again, like I said, kind of look at what their work like I know most of their workload, and try to do offer that support. What could I take off your list at least that I'm allowed to do, and do it for you? It'll take me, like you said, 5 minutes, where with them they have to find that 5 minutes to be able to do it. And so I feel like that's my goal, is to try to do that, is to take small things that I'm allowed to do that help facilitate that teamwork and those goals that we're trying to meet on a constant basis.
Do you know when that's really difficult, Christy? Is when I've got other things to do, when I've got a list of things my own self, and now I've got to decide, am I just going to try to make myself feel better and get things checked off of my list? Or am I going to look at this team member who's drowning and know that that 5 minutes it's going to cost me is going to lift a huge burden off of their shoulders? I have a choice to make.
Right.
What else?
Right.
Well, maybe this is going the right direction. First of all, the reason why you probably are not getting a lot of response from our team is because we are very blessed. We have a great team, and everybody is so supportive of each other. That's legit and real. On the other side of it, maybe with not just work tasks, but the way I would apply this is sometimes people and their emotions, or something they're carrying from home, if you notice it, sometimes just sitting and saying, hey, by the way, is everything okay? And putting them first at work, and just saying, no, you as a person are first, and then we'll get around to all the workload and everything. I don't know if that applies to what you're saying, but that's something that I would consider as well.
I think you're right. And I think that's something we're going to elaborate on in just a minute, because I think that's huge. I think people desperately want to be seen, and seen as a whole person, not as a cog in your work wheel. And so I think that's huge. Things like when there's an issue that comes up, choosing to resolve that in a respectful way, instead of kind of trying to tear somebody down or talk bad about them behind their back. That puts people first as well. It considers things from someone else's perspective. When I put down my phone when we're talking and I give you my undivided attention, that communicates to you that you're important to me. I got to tell you, sometimes they just walk in and I'm in the middle of doing something, and they come in and they just launch, and I'm like, oh. if I don't put it down, eventually they don't realize, they're not thinking about the fact that they've interrupted. They're thinking about the fact that they don't have my undivided attention. And so that's a huge way when even it's inconvenient to me to put my phone down or stop sending that email I'm sending and give you my undivided attention. That's a really big deal. That's the sort of thing that communicates the things people need to feel to be able to draw near to you. I can make sure that I'm not taking credit for other people's ideas, that I am taking responsibility when I screw something up, that I fess up when I mess up and don't try to cover it up. Being on time for meetings and things communicates your time is as valuable as my time is. These are things that we can do that really make a difference with others. One other one would be, if I know that we communicate differently, I'm a very direct communicator, and I know that you like more information and kind of stuff that just feels frivolous to me. I'll change my communication style to meet you where you are and give you the information you need, instead of sending you what I think you need and then getting frustrated with you when you ask me for more. So just thinking about how do other people, and the flip side is true also. If I'm a superfluous communicator, I send a small novel with every email, but I know that you prefer bullet points. Putting you first goes, man, I really think they need all this information. I guess I'll send the bullet points and let them ask if they need, it's thinking about things from other people's perspective. Putting others first at work is a simple thing, but it's not easy because we are so wired to think about ourselves first. So we've got to make sure that we are intentionally thinking, how can I put people first before myself at work? The next thing we can do with our influence is empathize with others. Empathy is understanding and sharing the feelings of others, and it is critical for people to feel like they can draw near to you, to be unified and connected with you. They've got to make sure that they are feeling seen and heard and understood. And that's a need that we all have. And so we want to offer it because we know we're going to want it in return. Now, sometimes I will hear people say, like, I'm just not a very emotional person and I just don't know how to quite do that. So I wanted to give a very practical way to walk out empathy at work. And that's this: walk through the highs and lows with people. Just be paying attention to the highs and lows that happen in their personal lives as they're sharing those, and in their professional life. Some highs that could happen in personal lives, marriages or babies and buying your first house and all of those things. Be looking for ways to celebrate those with the people on your team. Lows would be illness or illness of a family member, or death, or, you lose your home, kind of the opposite of all the really great things. Am I looking for ways to walk through that with people? Or am I just saying, man, that I'm so sorry? Am I actually trying to put feet to the things I'm saying to their face? I had a woman in our office who, I called her the card lady. She showed up with a greeting card for every holiday, even the ones you're not sure, even on the calendar. She would show up with a card and give one to everybody in the office. That's how she celebrated with us. And I got promoted to HR director, and she showed up to my office with a card, yes, but also a plant that I would most certainly kill in the next 3 days to say, congratulations, I'm so excited for you. She went out of her way to celebrate with me. Now, is that isolated? Maybe, but I don't think so. I think empathy tends to build on top of itself. So when about 8 months before I got promoted, her husband died. And I went to the funeral, and I got the little funeral program, and I wrote down all of the dates, his birthday, their anniversary, all of that on my calendar, so that as those things came up, I could check on her. I could hug her neck. I could send her a card. I could send her a song that I might think would minister to her, and just tried to care for her. Was that a standalone thing? Maybe, or maybe because she cared enough to really celebrate the little things with her coworkers, that we began to build empathy on top of empathy, and it drew us together. Empathy is such a foundation for when trouble comes, and it will, because we're people and we work together, conflict is coming. Empathy is the thing where a bond is made in those highs and lows of life. When people are by your side during the highs and the lows, you're willing to work through things instead of kind of having that "you're dead to me" attitude. So empathy is huge. Now, here's the tricky thing. Empathy is easy, most of the time, but sometimes it requires that we set our own feelings aside in order to experience and feel someone else's. So for example, if the card lady had been up for the same promotion that I was up for, she would have had a choice to make. Was she going to be supportive of me in that role? Was she still going to celebrate me in that role? Or was she going to go talk to somebody about, that should have been my job. I've been here longer. I've got more experience, that sort of thing. Sometimes in order to empathize and experience highs and lows with people, we've got to set our own feelings to the side to be able to actually meet them where they are. The same would be true with a funeral. If you've got, I've had managers before who had employees that lost their spouses, and their attitude was, I don't do funerals. I'm not going. And I get it, and I respect where they're coming from, but we get to choose how we're going to use our influence. Am I going to go with what makes me comfortable, or am I going to go meet somebody where they desperately need support? And when we do, we're making a choice about unity on our team. And the last letter is F. And normally that's not a good letter, but today it means foster resolution. Foster resolution. We want to use our influence in such a way that when conflict does come up, we are about resolving the conflict, that we're going to be the one that's advocating that conflict be resolved. We're not the one that's brushing it under the rug, pretending it doesn't exist, talking to everybody else but the person who's offended us. We're not going to be the one who's blowing it up or running it up the flagpole as quick as we possibly can, but we're the one who's trying to actively seek resolution. I had a truck driver once who called me on vacation. She was convinced that one of our other employees, a disposal attendant, had been talking about her behind her back. And her response to that was to go into the break room at shift change and tell everyone in the break room that this disposal attendant was talking about her, and to tell every manager who was there to call her manager and tell her manager, and also to call me while I was on family vacation at the beach with my kids to tell me about it as well. And the question I asked her was, have you talked to the person you think who was talking about you? Have you actually asked her if she was talking about you? And it had never crossed her mind. Sometimes confrontation can be uncomfortable, but I am here to tell you that if we're going to use our influence to bring unity, then when we're seeking resolution, we're going to do that with respect and integrity in terms of how we choose what we say, when we say what we're going to say, but also that it should be done one-on-one. Our default is to talk to everybody else instead of the person that frustrates us. But when there's conflict, we've got to go and address it one-on-one. When we do that, we can actually come out much stronger. Conflict isn't bad. It's either handled in a healthy way or an unhealthy way, but conflict itself is neutral. So how am I trying to resolve it? If I want to resolve it in a healthy way, I'm going to do that one-on-one, and then I'm going to be really careful with my word choice and my tone and my delivery. One of the best things that we can do when conflict comes up, if we're trying to be resolved, is to try to see things from the other person's perspective. I tend to look at things from this angle, but if I'm trying to understand from your perspective, I got to kind of walk around the desk and sit on your side and look at it from this angle and go, oh, well, I may still not agree, but it looks different from over here. So that makes sense. Sometimes we were talking about personal things going on that sometimes leak into the workplace. Sometimes the fruit and the root, we forget that fruit has a root, right? So if somebody's behaving badly, they're being offensive, they aren't doing things the way they should be, that's the fruit. That's what we can see with our eyes. But like any good fruit tree, it's going to have a root that's under the surface that we can't see. Just like the person you were talking about, Paula, there were things going on that just weren't at eye level. We had an admin assistant, the building we were in, when you walked in, you were in her office. And then all of our offices were off of hers. And so it's kind of like Grand Central Station. I mean, people are in and out of there all the time. And then the corner of her desk became a drop spot for people to pick things up. And people would be running through there and they'd grab her pen and they'd walk off with it, or they'd use her last sticky note, or they'd leave fingerprints all over her desk, just things that were just irritating to her. And one day she sends this hateful email. I mean, hateful. She emails everybody in the office, including both of her bosses. And she's like, I can't believe that you people don't respect me anymore. I'm not taking this anymore. Just hateful. And I'm like, I got a keyboard and nothing but time. So I start to respond. And as I'm responding, I go back to reread her email. And when I reread the email, what I realized was the level of anger that she had over this issue was way bigger than the issue itself. And I thought, instead of responding, I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to let it sit for a little while. And I got busy and went on about my day. Well, here in a little while, she came around office to office to office and apologized to everyone. And she said, I am so sorry. That was completely out of line. And then she listed these things that were going on in her personal life. Any one of them would have had me in the fetal position in the corner. And she had 3 or 4 of them. And it had just leaked out. This was the final straw for her. Well, I've been there. And so what we did as a team was be very intentional to see how could we support her in those things. We ended up being much stronger. You know, we took meals to the house to kind of help with the personal things, and we stopped using our desk as a drop spot. All the things we addressed both, but we ended up being a much stronger team, even though the conflict didn't start well, because we were willing to look for the root instead of just take fruit at face value and go on. We ended up being much, much stronger. So there are going to be times when we're trying to address conflict one-on-one and the other person just not having it. They want to be unresolved. They want to be mad. At some point, then it is time to bring a neutral third party in to help us mediate and work through it. But our default should not be go to everyone else first. Our default should be go to the person. You don't always know what the root of the problem is until, like Paula was saying, you start asking questions and you start learning that there is stuff below the surface. All right. The last key to this, I think, is making sure we are trying to be resolved instead of right. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and you were just kind of perched on the edge of your seat waiting for them to screw up and take a breath? Because as soon as they do, you're going to tell them why everything they just said is completely wrong. Have you ever been there? If you've ever been there, Brett says, nope, not me. If you've ever been there, you are trying to win. You are trying to be right. You're not trying to be resolved. You're not trying to figure out what the actual issue is and come to resolution. You're just trying to win. And we've all been there. If I'm trying to be resolved instead of right, then I'm going to pick my words very carefully. I'm going to be aware of my tone and my demeanor. I'm going to be aware of what I'm doing with my body. I'm going to think ahead of time of what time of day is going to be best for the person that I need to talk to. I'm going to be thinking about what location do I need to have this conversation so it doesn't feel like I'm on a power play. I'm going to just be thinking about how can we get to resolution. And I'm not going to cut you with my words like I would if I was trying to win this argument. I'm not going to pull all the punches and make sure that I cut you to the core. Instead, I'm going to try to find a solution to the problem. So we've got to make a decision with our influence. We're going to try to be resolved instead of right. Now, let me tell you quick how I know that all of these ABCs are true and accurate and that I didn't just make it up. Sometimes when there's a speaker, facilitator, we think, oh, they've got everything figured out. Mostly I just learn things the hard way and then pass them along in hopes that other people won't have to learn the same hard lessons. I worked for a company that was going out of business. And there was a company out in New Mexico that had like 8 or 10 employees, but they did the exact same thing that we did. And they decided just to acquire all of us, our building, our everything. They adopted our personnel manual, our safety manual, everything. Just overnight, we worked for one company and the next night we worked for another. And those poor 8 to 10 employees in New Mexico, they didn't have an HR director. They didn't have a safety director. They didn't have any policies, and they were fine with being in the Wild West. They liked it out there. They didn't want people telling them what to do. And then overnight, they got all the things they never asked for. And for a little while, I thought about how difficult that would be. And then after 6 or 8 months, the whole thing with the paperwork happened. That was a New Mexico supervisor, and I had it. Well, you've got to know before, as a little bit of background, that I'm a pretty type A personality. I'm the sicko that when I do something that's not written on my to-do list, I write it on the to-do list so that I can mark it off. That's the degree to which marking things off brings me joy. And so I'm systematically shutting down one company with the state and opening another with the state of Texas at the same time. And just, it's a lot. It's so much. And on this one given day, I realized in 9 hours, I worked through lunch. In 9 hours, I did not mark off one thing on my list. Not one thing. It's like the cardinal sin, not one thing. And so the whole way home, I'm like, what did I do today? And I retraced my steps. Never retrace your steps unless you want to learn something about yourself. Here's what I learned. For 9 hours, as the HR director of this company, I went from office to office to office, and I did everything wrong. I was impatient and arrogant. I was negative and pessimistic. I was comparing all over the place, and I was winning and they were losing. I had stopped trying to put them first. I was only thinking about things from my perspective. I wasn't trying to empathize with what this must have felt like for them any longer. And I was not trying to foster resolution. I was ticked and I was talking to everybody but the people I was frustrated with. I did everything wrong. And that is a bit of a revelation. And so the next day, I thought, this has to be righted. So I put on my big girl britches and I went back to work. And I said, y'all, I took a page out of that admin assistant's playbook. I went back office to office to office, and I said, I am so sorry. Yesterday was totally out of line. I spewed those thoughts and all of that stuff all over you, and it was so unfair, and it will never happen again. Well, here's what you need to know. Our working environment was so toxic, so miserable that nobody even thought what I had done was wrong. Everybody was like, I don't even know why you're okay, whatever. Like they had no perspective of how broken we were. But here's what happened. In the company I worked for as an HR director, I had an important job, but not a lot of positional influence. The officers of the company weren't asking me what my deep desires were for this company. I was just an employee like everyone else. And I made those apologies. And in 2 weeks' time, the dynamic in our office had radically changed. New Mexico was still New Mexico. The circumstances had not changed, but the attitudes absolutely did. People were smiling and laughing more. There was way less negativity going around. And all that happened is someone who had been doing it wrong said, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it right from here on out. We have so much influence that's totally unrelated to our position. And the question is, how will we use it? What would it look like in your organization if everyone did all of these things? If we were to all act patiently and humbly and be positive and optimistic, if we all cut out comparison and deferred to others and empathized with others and fostered resolution, it would change the dynamic on the team. It would make us more effective, more productive, and it would make our workplace more enjoyable. And the question is, what will I do with my influence? And the truth is, unity really does begin with you. All right, so that's unity from the standpoint of a person in the organization. So now for a second, for those of you in leadership roles, let's slip on those leadership hats and let's think about, okay, if I couple my personal influence with my positional influence, how do I lead these people toward unity? How do I do that intentionally and actively? I want to be thinking about 3 primary things: genuine care, a consistency of character, and clarity of purpose. That's really kind of where we're going to park for today. So genuine care, and y'all have kind of alluded to some of those things. Help me just a little bit. Help me think, turn on your mics, turn on your cameras, whatever, and tell me, when is a time you have seen someone genuinely cared for in the workplace?
Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay, sure. And I'm talking more similar to what Brett was talking about seeing them as a whole person and less about the workload, but the things that we all tend to bring. So, for example, when my dad was sick before he passed away, I spent a lot of time at the hospital. And I repeated, my boss called to say, don't worry about it. Take however much time you need, and meant it. The people on my team picked up all of the slack so that I wasn't doing subpar work from the hospital with one eye open and my heart broken. They just took care of the work so that I didn't have to worry about it. That was genuine care. I was on maternity leave one time with my second daughter and got a raise. I don't think you're supposed to get raises while you're out on maternity leave, but it sure was a blessing to me to know that I knew now how to pay for daycare for that second kid when I went back to work. And so we've just got, those are the things I'm thinking about, like genuine care from that perspective. Y'all have any ideas?
I used to work in an elementary school before I had this job, and we, whenever we had someone that had a crisis, I was an aide. And so whenever a teacher would need to go out of the room because, like you said, of a parent illness, or to get an update on the phone, or had to physically leave because they had their own children to care for, and the school called and said, you know, so-and-so's sick and you need to come get them, then I would go to my principal and ask permission if I could go in and substitute for that person. And then their team would rally around and give me the lesson plans or give me the student roster, and we would go from there so that we could let them do what they needed to do, and then they could come back and their classroom wasn't ripped up or in chaos, and the parents weren't wondering why didn't their folder get signed and why wasn't their homework sent home or anything. And so
Yes.
we would all try to rally as a team together to make sure that that person could do what they needed to do and then come back to work and have it not just have fallen apart.
Absolutely. And so similar to what I went through, when somebody's got to be out, especially unexpectedly, that we're doing what we can to help them not carry the stress from not getting that work done. Like we're making it so that it's easy to be gone and easy to come back. That's huge. Does anybody have anybody on their team that has kids in little league sports? I got to tell you, I don't care about t-ball. I just don't. I don't care about your kid's soccer game from the weekend. But genuine care says, I'm going to listen to the things that are important to you, and that your little sweetheart was sitting in left field, crisscross applesauce, picking flowers, and how it was the cutest thing in the whole wide world. I'm going to listen and entertain those things because those are the things that matter to you. If I'm trying to use my influence to build connection, I'm going to actually listen to the things people are saying, even if they don't actually matter to me. And I'm going to try to work on myself in such a way that I do genuinely care about the things they're saying, even if those are not naturally things I'm interested in. Can you think of any other ways that we might be able to show genuine care?
Well, I know here at the center, we always celebrate each other's birthdays with lunch and so forth, and presents, and just try to make it special. But any kind of milestones in our lives as well. I recently received a wonderful baby bed because I became a grandmother again. So, very significant, and but they're paying attention, and just we all just try to love on each other that way.
Absolutely. And really, it goes hand in hand with empathy. I mean, genuine care and empathy are so connected because it requires me to be aware of what's going on in your life, that I'm not so work focused that I forget that you're a person too, that I'm as concerned about you as a person as I am about the projects that you're working on, in such a way that I see what things are actually happening in your life. And by the way, congratulations on the new grandbaby. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's very
and
exciting.
we were really, comforting her when the Houston Astros lost to the Rangers.
Yeah.
Were you really comforting, or were you rubbing salt in a wound just a little bit?
They let
It's
me
okay.
jump on the
It was all
bandwagon.
good.
They were so nice. So I did.
That's all in good fun. It needs to, some of that workplace banter needs to take place, I think. The main thing here is that we're paying attention to the things that are going on in the lives of the people on our team, that they know that they are cared for genuinely. And here's the deal about genuine care. If it's not genuine, they're going to know it. You know, it's got to be legitimate. Otherwise, they feel like you're doing some sort of management strategy to try to get the most out of them. My dad was a COO of a water tank truck company for a really long time. He worked his way up from being a driver all the way to the top. And what he did so well in leadership was make people feel genuinely cared for. He could pull you. He was, when he died, people were telling stories at the funeral and stuff, and they were talking about he was the only person they knew who could pull you into their office to give you an absolute chew out about something that you had done and still have you leave nearly thanking them for it. And it's because he had built such a relationship with them. When there were hardships going on in their marriages, he was checking on them. When there was a sick kid, he was checking on them. When somebody had something going on, he would see if there was a way he could pitch in to get whatever you needed for that huge birthday party that was happening at your house or whatever. He was so good about genuine care. And the loyalty that it built with the team, it was masterful. I mean, they just were so connected. In fact, all of his pallbearers were supervisors who had worked under him because they cared and respected him so much because he cared so well for them. So genuine care is huge. Another really important thing that we've got to make sure we're doing in our leadership is consistency, where we've got a consistency in our character. Have you ever worked with somebody who was really unpredictable? I mean, you just didn't quite know what you were going to get on any given moment. I worked with a guy one time who every time the phone rang and his name popped up, I thought, I have no idea what I'm about to get. I cringe. I'd hate to answer the phone because it was either going to be super bubbly and he was going to say a lot of words without saying anything at all. And it's going to be like 30 minutes of my life I was never going to get back. Or I was going to answer the phone and he was going to be mid rage and just screaming at me and cussing me up one side or down and down the other, usually for something I had nothing to do with. And I didn't know what I was going to get. And his unpredictability made me not trust him and not like him. Another way that he was inconsistent is he was upset with his team. He worked remotely and his team was local. And he said, I'm coming in and I'm going down there to tell them they got to start doing this. They got to start doing that. They got to start doing this. And I'm like, okay, I coach him through how to say those things, whatever. Please let me know how it goes. He never calls me back. So I called to check on him. Hey, how did it go? And he said, well, I got to be honest. I threw you under the bus a little bit. I said, HR said this and HR said that and HR said this. And I was like, okay. I mean, I guess at least he had the decency to tell me he threw me under the bus, but it just was inconsistent in terms of what he was saying he was going to do and what he was actually doing. That sort of unpredictability, inconsistency, it pushes people away. When I left that company, he was like the only one that I didn't miss because I never knew what to expect with him. So as leaders, we've got to make sure that we've got a consistency of character that doesn't take people on a roller coaster, where they know what to expect. What you see is what you get, and it's going to be that way day in and day out. They know who you are. They know how you're going to react if they mess up. They know how you're going to react if things aren't going how they're supposed to. They know how you're going to react when change comes because you're consistent. And when we are consistent, that allows people to be able to connect with us. We want to make sure that our words and our actions match. That if I'm saying something to your face, I'm following through. And if I'm unable to follow through, I'm circling back to let you know why that changed. That builds trust. I want to make sure that the things I'm putting on paper match the things I'm saying out loud. In my very first management role, I got promoted to interim development director. I had no business being a development director, and I was in my early 20s, and everybody that was on my team, with the exception of one, was old enough to be my parent. In fact, I went to high school. I graduated from high school with my admin assistant's son. Okay. And so they were like, congratulations, you now have employees for the first time. Do your best. And so there were just a lot of things I didn't know, and I was afraid of conflict then. And so my admin assistant was always late, and that drove me crazy because she was the face of the building. She was the one to answer the phone, and she's late, and we're all scattering trying to do those things. And I never said anything to her in person because that was uncomfortable for me. So I waited until her performance review came around, and I said, "Hey, you need to be on time." And she said so kindly, "Ashley, it would have meant so much to me if you would have told me this ahead of time so that I could have had it fixed before the performance review." Well, of course, that's what she would have preferred. I was thinking about it from my perspective instead of putting her first and thinking about it from hers. So, lesson learned. But there was an inconsistency in my words or lack thereof verbally and what I was putting on paper. And so we've got to make sure that we're consistent across the board with those sort of things. We've got to make sure we're consistent with everyone in the organization, where I'm treating the highest person in the organization or the most important customer with the same degree of respect that I am our newest, lowest level new hire, or the smallest client that we have, where when people deal with me, they know what to expect. That's what we're after, is that there's going to be consistency no matter who's in the room. We also want to treat the people on our team fairly and consistently, where there aren't favorites. If you've ever been on a team where there was favoritism, you know it. You know it. And it's uncomfortable for everybody. It's uncomfortable if you aren't the favorite. And I'll tell you, it's even uncomfortable if you are the favorite, because you know how it must feel to be the other person. So we've got to make sure that we are fair and consistent with discipline. We're fair and consistent with how we apply policy, that we are treating everyone on our team fairly and consistently. And the other thing I would say is, if you're in a position where you're talking about the importance of respect or integrity, you're thinking of through your company's values, if you are saying those with your mouth, or you've put them on the wall, or they're on the website or on the t-shirt or whatever, but you're not living it out, there's inconsistency there as well. And that is really, really hard for people to connect to. I don't know if you've heard of John Maxwell. A lot of people have. He's written bazillions of books, and they're all wonderful. One of the things he says in 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership is that trust is the foundation of leadership. And I say to you, consistency builds trust. And so we've got to be consistent in our character. The last C here is clarity. And I'm talking about a clarity of purpose. What I'm not talking about is some sort of jargony organizational purpose statement. I'm talking about when you interact with the people on your team, you are looking at them and going, all right, here's what we do, but here's why we do it. And here's how you are an integral part of it. Where I am communicating not just the what's, but the whys and the hows and the where you fit in part, because that's so critical. Our people desperately want to know that they are doing something meaningful with their lives, that their lives have purpose, that they're leaving a legacy, that they're not just wasting their minutes of every day. And as leaders, we have the opportunity to give them a purpose that they can unify around. Lots and lots of organizations know what they do. In fact, most know what they do. Many know how they do it, but very few know why. Simon Sinek has a book called Start With Why, and it says that very thing, that we don't always know why we're doing what we're doing. And if we want to build unity on our team, helping our people connect with the why behind the work that we do is huge. They're going to rally and unify around a leader first, but then they will rally around a purpose second, and that builds that unity to an even deeper level. So we've got to be thinking about, what is our real true purpose here? Why do we do what we do? And then we add to that, why are you an integral part of it? Why? Okay, I know that you're the janitor here, but if you're not performing your janitorial services at a very high level, here's how it impacts what we are doing. And it keeps us from being able to achieve this bigger purpose. So we've got to really be thinking about, what is our why, and over communicating our why like crazy, so that people know what it is, and they know why it matters, and they know how they're a part of it. I don't know if you've ever heard that if you say something to someone, it takes like 7 times for them to actually hear you and 14 times for them to believe and remember what you have said. So what that tells me is, and those are low. It depends on which research you're looking at, whether it's 7 and 14 or like 3 times that high. So what that means is, as a leader, one of our chief jobs is to be an over communicator. When we are sick to death of saying it, when we think it should be embedded in the fabric of everything already, that's when they're just now starting to get it. So we work through the idea of finding our purpose, but then we communicate it every which way we possibly can, and we do it on repeat. And we have various people in the organization communicating that purpose. We are putting purpose before people so they have something they can connect to. And then a really good leader is going to go one step further, and I'm going to take my organizational purpose and I'm going to translate it into your personal purpose. Herb Kelleher, who was the former CEO and co-founder of Southwest Airlines, he said the important thing is to take the bricklayer and make sure he understands that he's building a home, not just laying bricks. So I'm letting you see within the context of this organization why the job that you are doing every day matters, not just to me, not just to the company, but to our customers, our clients, our sphere of influence. You have purpose. And that's our job as leaders. When we can help people identify their purpose and we can help them connect with our organizational purpose, y'all, what we have done is brought them so close into the fold with a degree of loyalty and excitement and enthusiasm that the only thing that can happen is unity. So we have important responsibilities as leaders in organizations. Everybody, I've already told you, everybody has influence. But as a leader in an organization, that opportunity and the responsibility we have for unity is even greater. We've got to use our influence in a way that draws people in. It really is up to you. Unity starts today, and it starts with you. So, what questions do y'all have, or things that you want to add at this point to what we've talked about so far? Okay, so
I'll
go ahead, Paula. Go ahead.
I worked in a labor relations atmosphere, so I worked with unions, and two things that I remember vividly: when I was first promoted to a manager, I had the "I'm invincible, I'm a manager" opinion, and I made a remark, "There's a new sheriff in town."
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, they helped me understand that I did not have the influence I thought I had. So there's always learning that can be done, and they also told me or taught me that I don't always have to be right, because being right all the time is a lot of responsibility, a lot of responsibility. It did
I
teach
agree
me
with
to
that.
agree to disagree.
Yeah, and it's also totally fine to say, I don't know. I don't know. Let me research that and I'll get back to you. And that too builds trust, because that says, okay, I know as a leader that you'll tell me, you're not just going to blow smoke. You're not just going to make it up as you go. You'll tell me when you don't know. And then when you tell me, you'll follow up and you actually do. Well, then that builds trust as well, because I'm seeing that you'll follow through on your word. So really, I don't know is a great answer at times.
Use it a lot.
It does. It does. You mentioned, you didn't have as much influence as you thought. We have influence. We're either using it positively or negatively. That part is totally true. And it's just a matter of, if I'm using it in a positive way, I will draw people in so that I have even more influence. Like it's one of those things that kind of snowballs with momentum. If I'm treating you well and I'm drawing you in, now you're listening more intently to the things that I'm saying. And now I have even more influence in the things that I'm doing. It's a matter of, will I start doing it well? Because if I'll circle back and I will really be intentional about doing the things that we've talked about today, man, it makes a big difference. And people do really connect.
Mhm.
Even when you think you don't have positional influence, it still gives people something to connect to.
One of the most effective managers that I ever worked with or I ever saw promoted to from right out of college, there were two of them. One guy came in and said, like I did, I'm in charge, I'm a manager. And the other one came in and said, look, guys, I don't know what I'm doing. Will you help me?
Yeah.
I respect what you do. Please help me learn. And he went on to be an extremely high level manager, and the
Mhm.
other one got another job.
Yeah.
So,
There's a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and it talks about how vulnerability is critical to building trust on a team. And so when I don't know, I have to be the one that says, "I need your help. I don't know." It's a great tool for building trust. Well, y'all, here's what I'm going to tell you. There is a great resource at your fingertips. I'm so grateful for the SBDC and the chance to get to share with you today through their organization. If you have questions after, if you're like, I'm just not one that's going to pop up and ask a question on camera, thank you very much. But you have questions afterwards, if you will reach out to the SBDC, they will connect us and make sure that you get the answers you need. They've got a ton of resources for you as you continue to grow your small business. And as a small business owner myself, I totally get needing the support and am grateful for an organization that's available to help with that. So with that, Ms. Paula, I'm going to stop the screen share so you can finish.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I really have enjoyed your talk. It has been just enlightening. It really has. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us today. And for everyone that has joined us, you'll be getting a survey, and we would love to know how we can, what topics you want to hear about, and how can we improve our program. Um, these are some of the upcoming webinars. I've only gotten, through the month of November, but these are coming up, and we look forward to having everyone join us. You can use that QR code. It will take you straight to our website where you can register for webinars. You can get our contact information. You can schedule an appointment to talk to an advisor, and there's also some other resources available on that website. Again, want to remind you we are grant funded, and because of that, we are able to provide our services at no cost. For that, we would like to give a shout out to the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office, and North Central Texas College, our host institution. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week for time management in QuickBooks Online. So this will end the webinar. See you all next week. Thanks.